let's hold this because it gets to something else that we want to talk about, which is that the U.S. military is now actively helping the Israelis plan for this campaign. John Kirby discussing some of that yesterday. Let's take a listen.
I can tell you, as Secretary Austin made clear yesterday, we have been in active discussion with Israeli officials since the beginning of this conflict to make sure we had a good understanding of their intentions, their plans, where they were trying to take things, to see if we could better understand how they've answered the very tough questions that any military needs to ask themselves before they commit to a large-scale operation of any kind. We want to make sure we have an understanding of how they are coming to those solutions and those answers. And, of course, we've made it clear that we'll be willing to help in any way that we can. But it is important to remember that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they make their own decisions. They decide what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. And again, all we're trying to do is make sure that they know we're here as a resource, certainly for information and context. We've had a lot of experience in this kind of thing, but also from a security assistance perspective.
So there he is. He confirms U.S. military is actively involved. And just to underscore that, let's put this on the screen. This was just a report yesterday. The Marine Corps 3-star general is now advising the Israeli military on the Gaza ground operation. So this is Lieutenant General James Glynn, according to senior Israeli officials. He has been on the ground now in Tel Aviv for some time, and he is now helping the operational plan for the IDF for how it is going to conduct itself in Gaza. And Lieutenant General Glynn is probably one of the people to know. Let's go and put this up there on the screen in terms of his past experience, but just to also underscore what this fight is going to look like, he was the deputy commander of some of the Special Operations Joint Task Force in Iraq in 2017 and 18. That was in the aftermath of the Battle of Mosul. More relevant to Gaza, he was the battalion commander of the 2-4 Marines during the 2006-7 Battle of Ramadi, which at the time was compared to a miniature Stalingrad. So I don't think I need to tell everybody about how Stalingrad went and the untold millions that were killed or wounded in that conflict, but it underscores two things. First, his direct operational experience in the Ramadi campaign, but really, and probably most relevant, is the Mosul campaign. Because if that's what they're looking for, in Ramadi and in Mosul, it was the similar, political objective. Elimination of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or in that case, ISIS, which it eventually morphed into. In both cases, it required thousands of casualties, even with air superiority, superior weapons, superior training, and that did not even have the civilian support that Hamas has inside of Gaza. Right. That's actually what I think is the real X factor in all of this. Right. People in Mosul hated ISIS.
They were not there for that. Yeah.
They wanted to kill. In many cases, they did kill them if they had the chance. Even Al-Qaeda in Iraq and in Ramadi. They had some Sunni support and all of that, but it was not even close. Hamas, and let's all be real about this, is what some people need to also admit, they have a ton of support. I'm not going to say they have 100 support, but it wouldn't shock me if it was majority.
And it doesn't mean that particular people support everything that they do, but it's like what Palestinians, what a lot of Palestinians in Gaza want is a militant organization that is going to fight Israel.
Right, and I'm not saying I agree with that. Right. I'm saying this is the basic reality. And whenever you have 50, maybe 60% of the population which is supporting you, especially when you've got an invading force now coming against you, what do? You give those people food, you give them water, you let them hide out in your house. I mean, that's a whole other scenario. When the Iraqi security forces were retaking Mosul, the civilians in most cases were like, they're over there, go get them, go, please, be my guest. They're in my house. You can take whatever you want. They were supporting the people that were reclaiming the territory. It's going to be a complete opposite, much more akin to the U.S. experience in Iraq, especially in the most hardcore elements where the vast majority of the population actually was supporting those groups. And we found out, in 2006 and in 2007 that just simply going in and killing those people, sending Navy SEALs in at night and killing the leaders of the terrorist group, it didn't work. It turned out what we had to do was pursue a massive counterinsurgency campaign, basically occupy the neighborhoods, try to bring democracy and police forcing and all that. And we took so many American casualties in that. And it didn't even work in the long run because we had to pull out because it cost too much and the political support wasn't there. So that's the nightmare scenario of what you're facing.
And the other two distinctions there are time and the tunnels. So with Ramadi, we invaded in 2003. This battle's going on in Haditha as well, where Glynn was. We're talking 2007, 2008. So they had just a couple of years to prepare. Gaza has this, like as we talked about earlier, this tunnel network that makes clearing an area door to door so much more difficult. Because if you can move underground, and you can move underground, and to understand the sophistication of this tunnel network, it appears that some Hamas fighters emerged in Israel on October 7th after going underneath an underground wall that Israel built so deep that they believed that Hamas would no longer be able to tunnel out, because that's what Hamas was doing. They were tunneling underneath the fence, underneath the wall, and then coming in and launching raids. They went even further than Israel understood that they were capable of doing. There are tunnels that go into Egypt, tunnels that go all over the place. And so if you clear an area and people have left by tunnel, and now you move out and you're trying to control other areas, people can tunnel right back in and come behind you. And so there was a briefing of this weekend that the Pentagon gave to the House Armed Services Committee, and Ken Klippenstein and I have been reporting on this. The New York Times seems to have some kind of related reporting recently that the Pentagon is extremely pessimistic about Israel's capacity to have any type of success in this ground invasion beyond just leveling buildings. Like that they can accomplish. But beyond that, can they even hold piles of rubble is an open question.
This is an excellent, let's think about, when's the last time the United States military had to face an extensive tunnel network in urban combat, or even just in jungle combat situation? It was Vietnam. And some of the most horrific stories of American service members in Vietnam are the tunnels. Or, we often overlook the Pacific campaign, but think about the battles on Okinawa and Iwo Jima. If you've ever seen Letter to Iwo Jima, it's a great film. I highly recommend it. What did they rely on? They're extensive, dug-in fortifications, which if you're willing to fight to the last man, well, the last time I checked, that's a pretty core tenet of Islamic extremist ideology. You can inflict a ton of damage. Yes, you will lose in the long run. But the U.S. at that time had total political commitment to the complete elimination of Japanese forces. We lost like 25,000 guys in some of these battles. And that was not in a densely packed urban combat situation. It's like overlaying the worst experiences of the Americans in jungle warfare in Vietnam and against the Japanese in the island chains, on top of some of the worst American experiences in Iraq. And, we really have never seen anything even like this. And that's why they're correct to be pessimistic. And I think the reason I'm trying to talk this way is you can support this action. You can be one of those people who's like, no, we got to do it. I just want you to know what you're signing up for. I want you to understand what that is going to look like for years and years, the political support that is going to require from the Israeli population and from the American population, not to mention the political backlash from the Arab world. This is the most predictable scenario on earth. Now, are you going to choose it? And if you are, you should know exactly what you are buying whenever you do that.
One more point that might seem trivial at this point, but if you, I'm sure you know a lot of people who were first responders, journalists, Wall Street people, types who were who were at Ground Zero on 9/11.
Well, I've heard the stories, but
so many of them did not live 10 years later because of the cancers that they got from all of the.
That's true.
The buildings that collapsed put out so much poison in the air that it has caused Jon Stewart's lobbying campaign to take care of those first responders. Every single person in Gaza is facing that right now, and every Israeli troop who goes in there and spends a week huffing in that air is looking at potentially fatal health implications.
Yeah, I had not thought about that, but you're totally right. But just the amount of particulates that are going to be up in the air. We got all this fire going on, all this other horrible stuff. War is hell. They say it for a reason. And at that time, it takes we need to be very aware of what we're doing, and it's clear that the U.S. now is deeply militarily involved, in planning with the IDF here. The IDF has got to have its eyes completely wide open, and it's not just them. All of you, if you're supporting this action, you also need to understand, what exactly is going to happen and what this is going to look like.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.